Wrapping it up in Rafah, the Israeli Defense Forces say it is in the final battles in the war against Hamas in the southern Gaza city. The fight should be completed in a couple more weeks. Well, according to the IDF, half of Hamas's battalions, along with 200 tunnel shafts, have been destroyed in Rafah. Does this now mean Israel will turn its attention to escalating the fight against Hezbollah in the north? Well, joining us is Alex Traiman. He is CEO and Jerusalem Bureau Chief of Jewish News Syndicate. Alex, it's good to have you with us. So what is the IDF facing now in Rafah as it tries to complete the battle there? Is it getting more dangerous or less for them?
Well, every day that the IDF is operating in Rafah, they're justifying the reasons why they needed to go into Rafah. To begin with, they found 25 long tunnels inside Rafah, they're now reporting. But certainly the situation is very dangerous. It's dangerous for a few reasons. Number one, because the IDF has to telegraph exactly where it's going to operate. Once they do that, and they're doing that because of pressure from the Biden administration, then the terrorists know exactly where they're going to be operating, where they're not going to be operating. So the situation is difficult. We lost 11 soldiers in Gaza in the last several days, but the IDF continues to press on, and they believe that they should be wrapping up the operation in Rafah in the coming weeks.
Can they wrap this up when they still have hostages that they haven't rescued yet?
Yeah, it's a big question about the hostages, and we saw how the IDF was able to rescue 4 hostages just over a week ago, but apparently there's not enough intelligence information to figure out where the rest of the hostages are or how to get them back. But Israel also has to turn its attention towards the north because Hezbollah has been escalating attacks, and the IDF is going to need to divert resources to the northern border with Lebanon to deal with Hezbollah in the coming weeks. And they may have to do that even if there are still hostages remaining inside Gaza.
Well, I want to talk about the north in a moment, but just how accurate do you think this estimate is of completing this job in just a couple of weeks?
Well, what they're trying to do is to dismantle the remaining battalions that are inside Rafah. And what dismantling means, according to the IDF, and I guess according to military doctrine in general, is to kill or incapacitate or neutralize 50% of a battalion. So I think that what they mean is that the major operation inside Rafah will be concluded in the coming weeks. But the prime minister has made it clear that the IDF will be present inside Gaza on some level or moving in and out of Gaza at least until the end of the year, if not much longer, because Hamas has changed strategies and they're operating with guerrilla tactics, and there's no way to take out every last terrorist inside the Gaza Strip in such a short amount of time.
So what are you saying? We're already seeing the beginnings of an insurgency?
I believe so. I mean, you're still seeing the major operation, but no question that the IDF is going to have to continue to operate. There are parts of the Gaza Strip that they have not yet gone into. They're finding more and more entrances into this vast tunnel network, and whenever Hamas terrorists will rear their heads, the IDF will have to use surveillance and use intelligence to go back in and to take care of what they find in more limited scale operations.
Okay, back to the north now, taking on Hezbollah in the north. It's going to be a much more difficult task. Why is that, and is Israel prepared for that?
It's a much more difficult task because the weaponry that Hezbollah has been amassing, the size of their army, and the types of rockets that they have is much greater than any threat that Hamas ever posed. You're talking about long-range rockets and missiles with estimates up to 200,000 rockets and missiles, many of them long range, many of them precision guided, many of them that can carry a much more significant payload than the Qassam rockets that Hamas fires in Gaza. We've seen Hezbollah already fire close to 19,000 rockets, anti-tank guided missiles at Israel since October 7th. Just in the last week, several hundred rockets fired, but we haven't yet seen them use the massive weaponry that they have. And what that means is that if the IDF goes in with a ground operation or escalates from its end the attacks, they're going to have to operate very quickly because Hezbollah has the ability to overrun Israeli missile defense systems if they fire in rapid fire. And quite frankly, they could blanket most of the Israeli home front if they decide to do so.
Well, why hasn't more pressure been put on the UN? They're supposed to have a ceasefire zone there as peacekeeping troops in the area protecting Israel from these type of rocket launches. Why aren't they doing their job? Why isn't more pressure being put on them?
Well, the UN is the organization that censures Israel not as much or more than any country in the world, but more than all countries in the world put together. In 2006, Israel negotiated a ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon. The organization UNIFIL, a UN agency, was supposed to come in and force a ceasefire agreement, UN Resolution 1701, to make sure that Hezbollah did not remilitarize in the southern sections of Lebanon. It has been an utter disaster, a national mistake for Israel to rely on UN troops. It's only Israel that can ensure its own security. And Israel is now going to pay the price of trusting the UN to keep peace when clearly they have no ability to do so.
And what reaction is Prime Minister Netanyahu receiving from most Israelis right now after Benny Gantz's resignation and the announcement that he's dissolving the war cabinet?
I don't think that the resignation has much to do with the way Netanyahu conducts the war effort. And most Israelis believe that Netanyahu would conduct the war the same way Benny Gantz would conduct the war. They see Gantz's departure as part of, the political divisions that existed in Israel long before October 7th. Those divisions had escaped, for a few minutes when there was a unity between Netanyahu and Gantz, who's one of his primary challengers. Gantz deciding that Israel needs to go to new elections now. So he's left the war cabinet, he's left the government, but Netanyahu still has a coalition in place. And most Israelis would like to see Netanyahu finish the war effort with a total victory, both in Gaza over Hamas, as well as in Lebanon over Hezbollah.
Okay, so finally, what do you think is going to happen here? Many pro-Israel observers say this war with Hamas and Hezbollah won't be over until you cut off the head of the snake, meaning Iran. So your thoughts on that?
It's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen, but you're correct. Many people incorrectly frame this conflict until now as the latest round of an intractable Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But when you look at what's actually happening, the fact that this attack was by Hamas, that Israel on October 7th began to be attacked as well by Hezbollah, that Houthis in Yemen have been attacking Israel in commercial shipping lanes. Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, these are all terror proxies of Iran. This is the head of the terror octopus. It's the largest state sponsor of terror. This is a war between Israel, Iran, and its proxies. Iran itself has fired over 300 cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and drones at Israel from its own territory. So I don't think that you're going to have peace in this region until Iran is taken care of. There's a simple formula for transforming the region. That is to normalize relations with moderate actors, as Israel has done with the Emirates, with Bahrain, and is trying to do with Saudi Arabia, and to remove the terror entities, which are Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the head of that terrorist octopus, which is Iran itself.
Well, a lot of interesting and dangerous days ahead. Alex Traiman, Jewish News Syndicate in Jerusalem. Thank you, Alex, for sharing your time and insights. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary, for having me.